What it do, cuckolds? It's your boy the hater up in this pace, and today's video is going to be on how WWE, aka wrestling, lost its edge. Now we're going to focus on the WWE primarily because talking about AEW would be silly because they've never had an edge. WWE, however, has always had an edge, but now they've lost it. So the hater was out there on the interwebs doing some research up in this mug, right, about other things. And I come across a random ass article talking about none other than Corey Graves. Now, Corey Graves, first of all, is a guy whose name is Corey, right? So that right there is enough to make him uncool in the world of wrestling. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Apparently, Corey Graves is pissed off that WWE has effectively demoted him. Now, personally, I could give a rat's ass because Corey Graves sucks and is a jobber, but this is indicative of the WWE losing its edge. Now, Pat McAfee, who is the man that has replaced effectively Cucky Graves, this guy is, in my opinion, not good at his job. He's over the top, he's like weird looking, and they keep talking about how he's like this incredible athlete. I think he's kind of mid in everything he does. But more importantly, think about it, cucks. Pat McAfee represents the sanitized corporate WWE, the TKO WWE. Now, the PG era did its thing, you know what I mean? And it took wrestling down a couple of pegs. However, wrestling still at times had its edge. You know, like if we had to measure the edge of wrestling, we would go from on one end of the spectrum, we have TKO, and on the other end, we have prime Vincent Kennedy McMahon, all right? We're never going to get to that again unless something fundamentally changes, you know? Everybody that is in charge now is a corporate sellout or, quite frankly, a dork. You know, they showed that, like, what's his name, Nick Khan or whatever? That guy is just a dork. You can just look at him and be like, this guy's a nerd, you know? He doesn't know what cool is if it hit him right in the ass. Now, I'm not saying that Corey Graves is like, you know, the epitome of cool either. But clearly, he does have like a certain edge to him, right? You look at him and he's got like tattoos on his hands and things of that nature. And he doesn't come off as your standard, like, you know, WWE commentator. Or quite frankly, he doesn't even come off as your standard sports commentator, right? He comes off as like, you know, a guy that likes tattoos and is kind of like this, you know, grungy type dude. You know? And that does a lot to kind of espouse the edge of wrestling, right? The idea is that in wrestling, even the polished individual is not that polished, right? That's why like the best announcers of all time are not people like Michael Cole and Wade Barrett who wear a suit, right? It's JR with a cowboy hat and Jerry the King Lawler who would literally come out dressed like a king out of a deck of cards, you know what I mean? So there is something about that in wrestling. The idea being that we're not, like we being the wrestling community as it was, we're not this polished community. You know, wrestling is inherently a white trash, no suit having sport, right? It's almost like boxing. Remember when like boxers and like people like Mayweather and Conor McGregor started wearing suits? And it's like, all right, you know, depending on who's wearing the suit, it brings up a different, you know, idea. But for example, the NBA is a great example, right? When they are allowed to dress however they want, they pretty much embrace all the stereotypes about them. They dress like complete idiots, you know? But that's part of the culture of that fandom, right? The subculture of wrestling used to be a powerful one. And the idea is that JR can dress like a cowboy, right, wearing a regular shirt, basically, and do just as good of a job as, like, I don't know, Bob Costas, who's always going to be wearing a suit. And Corey Graves represents the end of this, right? Again, you know, I'm not speaking specifically about Corey Graves. I could give a shit that he lost his job. I mean, obviously I don't want him to lose his job because I don't want anybody to lose their jobs. But it's like he got demoted because, you know, they're going a different direction. And the direction they're going clearly is the Pat McAfee direction. It's the corporate direction. Or as I like to call it sometimes, the Bill Burr direction, right? There's different people that are like different levels of edgy. And then there's that Bill Burr level of edgy where you're not edgy at all, but you're edgier than like the guy that's watching you, who then thinks you're like the edgiest guy. You know what I'm saying? So it's like Pat McAfee is more boisterous than the average viewer, but he's not more boisterous than the average bar goer, in the Ironbound in Newark, New Jersey. Absolutely not. He couldn't hang there. You know what I mean? He can't hang in that kind of environment. He can hang with a bunch of dorks. He's a little bit cooler than the dorks, right? The same thing could be said about Corey Graves, but the point stands. The idea is the sanitation of the WWE into being this kind of like sport that treats itself like a sport and that kind of wants to have this level of prestige that, in my opinion, is counterintuitive in sports. I could put it to you this way. There's NFL Madden, and then there's NFL Blitz. Some of us align more with NFL Madden, and some of us align more with NFL Blitz. The WWE is the ultimate, alignment with NFL Blitz, with NBA Street. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference. It's supposed to be an edgy product, but the edge has been completely lost. And the example of Corey Graves is just that. It's an example. You could see this with any other element of the product itself, right? So you could see this with like Jimmy Uso. Jimmy Uso has no edge to him whatsoever. Jacob Fatu is basically another Jimmy Uso who's a little bit fatter, and they just tell you that he's edgier and more badass, even though there's no evidence to back this up whatsoever, right? That's the problem. It's not like, you turn your TV on, you tune into Monday Night Raw, and you see the Godfather coming out, who's like a 6'9" dude whose gimmick is he's a pimp, and you're like, damn, that guy's cool, because you could just look at him and be like, wow, this guy's cool as shit. Nobody has to explain to you why he's cool, right? With Pat McAfee and those sorts of people, these bores, these are now meant to attract not the crazy ass wild audience that these things used to attract, right? The me's and you's, if you will, cucks. They're not meant to attract us anymore. Now they're meant to attract the average Joe, the guy who's majoring in dentistry, the guy whose undergrad is in biomedicine, like these boring ass motherfuckers, dude, like the accountants. The people that like get off work at 8:30, then they go and they loosen up their tie, and they have like a nice Miller Lite or something, that kind of person. That's what they're trying to capture now. It's no longer part of the people that are willing to powerbomb you on the street for no reason, And I understand, I'm not saying that one group is better than the other. I'm just saying that one group likes things that are more conducive to entertainment for all, right? We all know these kinds of people. The boring ass people in our lives, the accountants in our lives, the lawyers even in our lives for the most part, right? We know a lot of these people that are just these bores that enjoy things that you and I look at and we cringe, right? Well, maybe not all of us, but you understand what I'm getting at. We have these opinions about a lot of these things that people like, that we look down on, right? This is something that is as old as time itself. There's things that are inherently cool, and there's things that are, portrayed as cool to kind of capture that boring person demographic, which is like a very, very big demographic. So you can think, for example, the difference between watching a Jean-Claude Van Damme or maybe like an Arnold Schwarzenegger or a Stallone movie, or even like one of those Michael J. White movies that go straight to DVD, which are pretty much all awesome, versus watching a movie starring like George Clooney or Denzel Washington, these like hoity-toity type movies that are made for boring ass people. How will Denzel Washington and Tom Hanks battle the stereotypes of men with AIDS who are gay in Philadelphia? Who the fuck cares? You know what I'm saying? Give me Arnold killing a predator, along with Jesse the Body Ventura, and then you're gonna make me much happier. You see what I'm getting at? That's what wrestling used to be. It used to be edgy. I will conclude with the ultimate analogy. There's this very, very famous, I guess we'll call it a video clip from the UFC, right? I believe it was UFC 1. There's this clearly drunk, jacked dude, right? He's a fan. He has his shirt off, and he's just flexing every muscle and just looking roided up and insane, right? This is an iconic UFC clip because that guy was selected and continues to be selected as a representation of the UFC fan. Someone that is like that. Someone that is unruly. Someone that when they hear hard rock, they start breaking tables for no reason. That's the guy that encapsulates the UFC fan base. There was a point where the WWE fan was that guy, right? No longer is that the case. Now, the WWE fan is about 435 pounds, likes My Little Pony and it beats off the hentai, you know? These are not the same people, and as a result, they don't enjoy the same things, you know? Some of us enjoy JBL on commentary, some of us enjoy Corey Graves, but we're not even gonna get that. We're gonna get basically a bunch of Michael Coles. Wade Barrett is effectively a Michael Cole. Michael Cole is a Michael Cole. Tessitore is a Michael Cole. And Pat McAfee is effectively a Michael Cole +1. He's there, and his job is just be one level cooler than Michael Cole. Michael Cole is like one of the least cool people in the world, right? Michael Cole has the cool factor of a fucking accountant, you know, of a fucking dentist. And that's the point, that's the problem, right? Where you had like JR, who's cool in his own way, in a southern way, and you had the King, who's just more charismatic basically than every other announcer combined, you know? Those days are gone. And I'm using it as an example, because you also had people in the undercard. Remember when the Hardy Boys were in the undercard? How over Jeff Hardy would get, right? Because he was legit charismatic, he was legit cool. Now, they give you like fucking, you know, Miles Bourne or whatever, Riley Osborne, like Thea Hale, Duke Hudson, these types of NXT jobbers, like Chase U guy. That guy's basically Michael Cole, but he's a wrestler. You know, this shit would never fly back in the day because of the wrestling and the WWE and wrestling in general, because, you know, we're also including WCW and obviously ECW, was edgy. Now it's no longer edgy. Now it's lame. WWE has lost its edge, cuckolds.